What's up, everybody, and welcome back to Fireside Giants. I'm your host, Anthony Rivardo, and today I'm going to be examining the New York Giants cap space. I know a lot of you guys really do enjoy when we break down the salary cap here on the channel. Usually we do this during the offseason leading into free agency, but every now and then it becomes a relevant topic during the regular season as well, and that day has come today. The Giants cap space is killing them. And I'm going to go ahead and break it down and explain why the New York Giants are in such a midseason salary cap pickle. When you're looking at this New York Giants team in Week 5, one of the things that we questioned was, why didn't they bring another receiver into that game versus the New Orleans Saints? Of course, Malik Neighbors, we know in Week 4, tore his ACL. He is done for the season. The Giants had a full week to prepare for the Saints. They could have called somebody up from the practice squad to play wide receiver. They elected not to. They could have went out into free agency, tried to sign a veteran, Odell Beckham Jr. or otherwise. Obviously, a lot of fans want Odell, but there are a lot of other options. Isaiah Hodgins is sitting on the Pittsburgh Steelers practice squad. There are players around the league that the Giants could have signed, that being the end-all, be-all. Ultimately, they didn't bring a single extra receiver into that game versus the Saints. The receiving core that they rolled with featured Darius Slayton as the number one receiver. Obviously, that was a mistake, but they don't really have any other options. The number 2 receiver being Wan'Dale Robinson, number 3 receiver being Bo Collins, and number 4 receiver being Jalen Hyatt. Yes, that's right. The Giants only rolled into that game with 4 wide receivers. The 5th was technically Gunnar Olszewski, but he didn't play a single snap on the offensive side of the ball. Olszewski is a return specialist for the Giants, and they don't seem to have any interest in taking him off of special teams and applying him on the offensive side of the ball, despite him playing some pretty damn good football at wide receiver during the preseason. I'll be the first to say I was not a Gunnar Olszewski believer. I thought going into the preseason, I've seen enough. I don't need him at wide receiver. He can be the return specialist, or the Giants can find somebody else to use that roster spot for. He proved me wrong. He made a lot of plays as a wide receiver in the preseason that convinced me, yeah, you know what, this guy does deserve a roster spot. He is a rosterable player and a useful player for the Giants in 2 facets of the game. But nevertheless, against the Saints, they decided, no, he's staying on special teams. He will not play any wide receiver. Very confusing to me. But that's the receiving core that the Giants have now. Those 4 players, Slayton, Robinson, Collins, and Hyatt. Unfortunately, Darius Slayton is now also injured. He's dealing with a hamstring injury, and the Giants play on Thursday Night Football. So, short week, quick turnarounds. Very unlikely, in my opinion, that Darius Slayton actually gets on the field on Thursday night. So, what are they going to have? Robinson, Collins, and Hyatt. And that's all they had towards the end of that Week 5 matchup with the New Orleans Saints. Slayton exited the game with his hamstring injury, I think in the 3rd quarter, and for the last quarter and a half, the New York Giants played with just 3 receivers on their roster. So, the reason I'm giving you all this context in a salary cap breakdown episode is to explain why the New York Giants only had 3 receivers on their roster. Why didn't they have an extra receiver who could suit up on Sunday? Why did that happen? Currently, the New York Giants have just $1.42 million in salary cap space. That is by far the least amount of cap space in the NFL. There are teams like the Patriots who still have $54 million in cap space. The Cowboys have $31 million. There are a lot of teams who are tight on cap space, sure. The Chiefs only have $3 million. But believe me, at this point in the season, $3 million versus $1.5 million, that $1.5 million is a whole extra contract or 2. That makes a monumental difference. The New York Giants don't have the money to add an extra player to their roster. That's simply put what it is. They don't have the money to sign a wide receiver. They don't have the money to call somebody up from their practice squad. They can't afford to make any roster adjustments. That's where they find themselves here. That's why they are just completely out of luck in the receiving department. So, how did they get here? Now I've explained it. Giants didn't have a wide receiver, so it highlighted their need for cap space or their lack of cap space. Now we're looking at it and we're saying, wow, they have no cap space. Compared to the rest of the NFL, they are broke. They have $1.4 million. What are they possibly going to do about that? Well, before we discuss what they can do to clear up more cap space, let's talk about how they got into this predicament. One of the main things that I'm going to point towards is the 2023 offseason. That offseason is going to go down in New York Giants history. It already has. That offseason, the New York Giants decided to let Saquon Barkley walk in free agency the following year. He walked in 2024, but in 2023, they made up their minds. 2023, they negotiated with Saquon. Saquon rejected their contract offers. They refused to add the extra $2 million in guarantees to his contract. That's all it was, $2 million in guarantees to get Saquon Barkley to sign the dotted line. In the meantime, they also declined his request for permission to seek a trade. This is all new information that was released in the documentary from Saquon Barkley. They declined his request for permission to seek a trade. They refused to pinch up the $2 million to give Saquon Barkley the contract that he desired and signed him to the team. Meanwhile, they franchise tagged Saquon and they signed Daniel Jones to a 4-year, $160 million contract. So instead of paying Saquon Barkley $11 million per season, which is what he's on the record saying he would have signed for, they paid Daniel Jones $40 million per season. Now, they only gave 2 years of guarantees to Daniel Jones in that contract, which is why they were able to release him midway through last year without too much of a penalty. But I say that with an asterisk because saying without too much of a penalty downplays the massive penalty that the New York Giants did intake by cutting Daniel Jones. $22.2 million of the New York Giants salary cap is going towards Daniel Jones right now. Daniel Jones is on the Indianapolis Colts, playing with a 4-1 record, as everybody loves to remind Giants fans. He looks legitimately like if the season ended tomorrow, he would be a top 5 MVP candidate in voting. Daniel Jones over in Indianapolis is still getting $22 million from the New York Giants, despite the fact that he's no longer on that team. That contract and the decision from general manager Joe Schoen to sign that contract while also blatantly disrespecting Saquon Barkley in negotiations, according to Barkley himself and according to Kayvon Thibodeau and other players who have spoken on the matter, that has had such a terrible domino effect on this organization. That moment in time where I know many of you were viewing Fireside Giants back then, you heard me screaming and pounding the table and saying, pay Saquon or tag Daniel Jones. I was so adamant that they should tag Daniel Jones that offseason. That seemed like the clear and obvious play considering he had a long injury history. He only had one legitimately good season where the Giants won football games, right? It just made sense going into that 2023 offseason. Don't tie yourself potentially with a massive, ludicrous contract to a player that the ownership and that the front office didn't necessarily have full belief in. Nevertheless, they signed Daniel Jones to that long-term deal, and they're still paying for it. The Giants have $29.8 million in dead money on their books. $22 million going to Daniel Jones, $4.9 million, $5 million handed to Darren Waller, of all people. Darren Waller came out of retirement earlier this offseason to join the Miami Dolphins via trade. Yeah, the Giants received a 6th-round compensatory pick, I believe, or conditional pick for the trade. However, they also added an extra $5 million to their salary cap, to their books. So that's where all the money is going that you don't want to recognize here if you're the Giants. $29 million in dead money. Now, they also have an additional $22.4 million in injured reserve money, and that's really hurting them. They have players like Josh Azidu, who's still on injured reserve. He's been on injured reserve for a good long time. He's making $1.8 million against the cap. That's a player that the Giants were pretty much looking at as unplayable last season. He doesn't need to be on this roster. They could have released him during the summer. Instead, he gets injured at the end of the summer. They hold on to him, and now he's taking up $1.8 million. You've got a guy like Chris Board, a backup linebacker, $2.3 million. Micah McFadden is on injured reserve, $3.5 million. Graham Gano, a player that a lot of Giants fans said the Giants should release all summer long, right, because of the cap savings. $5.6 million cap hit on injured reserve doing nothing for the New York Giants. Meanwhile, Jude McAdam has yet to miss a field goal or an extra point. He's very clearly capable of being a starting kicker for the New York Giants. And the Giants decided, no, we don't want Jude McAdam to start for us. We want to pay $6 million to Graham Gano this season. And now Graham Gano is on injured reserve, taking up that money. They could have released him. They could have saved over $3 million. And he's just sitting there taking up space on injured reserve. That's essentially what it is. Now, that $5.6 million, that $3.5 million that they would have gotten from releasing Graham Gano, That could have added some serious depth to the wide receiver core. Instead, it's just going to Graham Gano, who's on injured reserve. And of course, there is also Malik Neighbors, who does have a $6.6 million cap hit. He's taking up a lot of the money on the injured reserve. But right there, you've got $30 million in dead money, and you've got $22 million in injured reserve money. That's $52 million that the New York Giants are paying on their salary cap that's not even seeing the football field. It's really unacceptable to me. Among the other players who are also getting dead cap hits, Jeremiah Ledbetter at $500,000, and a bunch of UDFAs and small guys who are making less than $300,000. So it's not a huge deal there. But in order to get a guy from your practice squad, the Giants are allocating $4.2 million to their practice squad right now. That's not necessarily a ton of money, but in order to get a guy from your practice squad up onto the regular season roster, you have to sign them to a veteran minimum contract of around $1.2 million. Now, in order to get there, you have to take a guy like, for example, Elijah Chapman. If you wanted to take him off of the practice squad and bring him up to the regular season active 53-man roster, well, what are you going to do? You're going to have to add $1 million to your books. And the Giants only have $1.4 million, so they can't do that. That's where the issue lies for the New York Giants. That's why Lil Jordan Humphrey, of course, was a clear and obvious player that they should add to the roster on Sunday versus the Saints, right? Well, he makes $396,000 against the cap on the practice squad. If you're going to bring him up to that veteran minimum salary, you are going to eat a ton of the remaining salary cap space that the New York Giants have left. So, essentially, what it comes down to, they just don't have the money to adjust their roster. What they have is what they've got. Could they make more money? Well, yeah, sure, they could. But the ways of doing so are not exactly too exciting. Players that they could release mid-season, but they won't. John Runyon Jr. or Bobby Okereke. Okereke, releasing him saves you $6 million. John Runyon, $3.5 million. And neither one of those guys is going to get released. They're starters, and they're key starters for the Giants. Russell Wilson could be released to save $1 million, but they're not going to release him just for $1 million. If they were to trade Russell Wilson, though, they could potentially save $3 million against the salary cap space. So as they get even tighter on cap space, do keep an eye out for that. One clear and obvious one that the Giants should have done last year was trade away Evan Neal. Trading him now would save them $4 million, but now he doesn't have a market since he's been an unplayable healthy scratch through the first 5 weeks of the season. Cutting Evan Neal saves you $0, so you might as well just keep him on the roster at this point. One thing that they should look to do is extend Jermaine Illuminor. That could save them nearly $4 million, but Jermaine Illuminor probably doesn't want to be here in 2026 based on the way that things have gone through 2 seasons, and he's due to get paid in free agency regardless of what team he's playing for. Rakeem Nunez-Roches, you could cut him for $3.6 million, but realistically you're not going to because he's a starter who plays a lot of minutes for your football team. Same thing for Daniel Bellinger, especially now that the receiving core is so shredded. You could cut him for $3.4 million, but you're not going to because he's essentially your number 3 receiver on this team now, as crazy as that is. One player that I would release is Jalen Hyatt. You could save $1.2 million by cutting him. And I honestly just think Jalen Hyatt is worthless to the New York Giants at this point. He plays terrible football week in and week out. He can't hang on to the football. He is a net negative, in my opinion, on this team. So I would totally consider releasing Jalen Hyatt midseason and bringing in another receiver who can give you better minutes. Whether that's Lil Jordan Humphrey, whether that's Odell Beckham Jr., I don't know. But Jalen Hyatt can't catch a pass, can't catch a cold to save his life, let alone a football. Can't catch anything. So I would move on from Jalen Hyatt if I were the New York Giants, and that's that. I would just bring in another receiver with that money. Now, realistically, the Giants aren't going to cut these guys off of their active roster. All of these guys who are on the active 51, they're going to keep on the active 51, but they could do some restructures. They could restructure Brian Burns to save $4.1 million. Bobby Okereke, $3.9 million. Dexter Lawrence, $9.8 million. John Runyon, $4 million. Paulson Adebo, $3.5 million. But the issue, of course, with restructuring these contracts is you're going to take that, let's call it $9.8 million for Dexter Lawrence. You're going to take that money, open it up now, but you're going to have to pay it later. So if Dexter Lawrence is on a $23.6 million cap hit this year, but he's under contract through 2027, if you're going to take that $9.8 million, you're going to have to split that in half. That's call it $5 million per season that you're going to have to add to 2026 and 2027. And right now, the Giants only have $19 million in 2026 cap space. They're tight on next year's salary cap space already if you're looking ahead to the 2026 free agency period. So the Giants really don't have a lot of options. They can restructure these contracts, but they're going to increase their salary cap burden over the next several seasons if they do that. And they don't really have a lot of room for error here. So the New York Giants' mismanagement of the cap is the reason why they didn't add a wide receiver. It is the reason why they are finding themselves with a roster that is completely depleted of any talent worth putting on the field on Sundays. It all boils down to mismanagement of salary cap. So yesterday, we did discuss the coaching staff, Brian Daboll in particular. Should the New York Giants fire Brian Daboll? Should they move on? Should they start over? Well, we also mentioned how the general manager, Joe Schoen, hasn't necessarily done a great job either. That's why I kind of discussed some of that 2023 offseason. And that's why I wanted to highlight the salary cap space. Because the New York Giants, well, this coaching staff doesn't have a lot of room to operate either. You can't fully blame the coaches. You can blame Brian Daboll for not activating a wide receiver off of the practice squad, but you also do have to blame Joe Schoen for not giving the head coach any money to work with during the season. There's just none of it there. The Giants are spending $140 million on their defense this year. Their defense, what has it accomplished this season? It ranks 28th in the NFL. They're spending $108 million on their offense. Their offense, what has that done for them? It ranks 28th in the NFL. This is the 28th football team in the league. They're terrible. They're a bottom 5 team in the NFL. And yet they don't have a single dollar to spend against the salary cap. And like I said, you look around the league, sure, there are some other teams towards the bottom. Bills and Chiefs being good football teams towards the bottom in salary cap space. The Colts, a good football team. They have $4 million in salary cap space. There is a team like the Dolphins who's also struggling with $1.8 million in salary cap space. But most of these teams towards the bottom are good teams. But you also have good teams towards the top. The Patriots, the Commanders, the Lions, the 49ers, the Seahawks. All of those teams have at least $20 million in salary cap space right now. So it doesn't take spending every ounce of your money to make a good football team. It takes drafting well. It takes actually navigating the salary cap in a healthy financial perspective way. The Giants haven't done any of that, and that's why this team is 1-4, staring 1-5 in the face down the barrel against the Eagles at home on Thursday night. So I just wanted to break that down for you guys. I know you like it when I do break down the salary cap, especially when Alex does it. But I'm going to go ahead and just sign this one off today and say, hey, New York Giants, get your ish together, because you're spending all of this money on that bad of a football team. Well, I don't know what to tell you, but the New York Giants, what a bad team, and New York Giants fans do deserve better. So they better figure out how to clean up this salary cap space, add a wide receiver for this upcoming Thursday night's game, and be a competitive football team. Otherwise, fans are going to start jumping ship. We've already started to see that on social media. But nevertheless, guys, do make sure to leave a like if you enjoyed this breakdown. Subscribe to the channel if you're new. Ring the bell so you don't miss an episode. And do comment your thoughts down below in the comment section. If you listen to Apple or Spotify, make sure to leave us a 5-star review. And go ahead and follow us on all of our social media channels at Fireside Giants. Without further ado, we'll catch you on the next one. Have a good one. And let's go, New York Giants.